Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Suzan Galluzzo Health and Nutrition Wellness Podcast. I have a very nostalgic person today, my coach and mentor and personal friend, Vince Delmonte. Thank you very much for being here. We're in Toronto, which is so awesome that we get to do this live together. And really just, I love that we keep coming together to enlighten, inspire, and, Vince will always be a part of my learning journey. I'm one of those people that's like loyal to the core. I stick around for a very long time, so you'll never get rid of me. So let's get to it. Today, our topic is going to be around a few different things. We're going to talk about marriages and, we're no experts. By far, we don't have perfect marriages, but we do know a few things that have worked for myself, for Vince, in and around topics like, because we are both coaches, we both, want to lead and inspire who we're coaching. And it has to come from a place of transparency. And so if I'm not doing everything that I can, how can I promote that and encourage that? And for me, I'll start a little bit about my story. So, I met Vince in 2019, September 2019. And at that time, I was still a studio owner and very capped at a ceiling. There was no way, income-wise, even growth-wise, I could not foresee that future at all. I thought, with this online thing, I get it. It's viral, 2019. It's going crazy for a lot of people in my industry. But I just wrote it off as something like I kind of tried it. And because the tech was just way too intimidating, I quickly wrote it off. And then started seeing some ads on Facebook. And I was like, come on, is this real? And I started to watch all the testimonials that you had at the time. But this fear paralyzed me because there is no way I was going to go to my husband and say, I want to do another coaching program, because I had dabbled in a few, but one thing I can say, like, just dabbling does not mean anything. It's even now I know that even complete failures in other coaching means nothing about your next experience. Right. And it's like always being open to that experience. So I bite the bullet. I showed my husband kind of what you were doing. And he's like, he was pretty open-minded. And he was like, hey, you know what? You never know. You never know. He just kept saying that. And so then we booked the appointment and we get out to see Vince in Toronto, 2019. And what's shocking to me, and still to this day, is that Stefano had more faith in my ability in this program. I literally went home. I wanted to cry.
I think the way the conversation went was like, you're going to have to convince him to buy in. And it was the other way around. He had to convince you, like, yo, you should definitely do it. Yeah, absolutely. This is a no-brainer. Go for it.
That was his attitude.
You're scaring me. I'm like, he's like, oh, he's going to be so resistive to this. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to be there. I'm like, I've never done a one-on-one
husband-wife
interview with the husband in person. Yeah. And he was fully on board. Like, how do we get started?
Yeah.
So that's a great, that's the type of husband that you want. I mean, to know you have his support and go for it, honey. What do we have to lose? Let's do this.
Yeah.
I thought it was really neat to see that. It was a really great energy. How did that feel for you?
Well, because it was, I hadn't even gotten into the online, it actually shaped my belief system for my future online clients. My expectation of members changed before I'd even started.
So you saw what was possible, so you could speak to the lady like, hey, there are men out there who will support you, and don't lower your standards, or at least maybe start the process of figuring out what might be blocking that.
Yes. And it's a two-way relationship. If I'm expecting to receive this support, for him, it's going to come in a different way, in a different angle. And so if I'm not prepared to also support that, then it's not going to be reciprocated. And I think that's when I learned in my marriage, because, you know, we were married it's our anniversary now this month, February. So we're in 2024 and this is 2019. So it's like 5 years ago. So our marriage was, you know, we have a 12-year-old now. So we were 8 years marriage, still pretty fresh,
right?
Still pretty new.
Oh, yeah.
You're still like, you know,
Totally.
very newlywed-ish.
Yeah.
Kids are young and you're just kind of, I feel like we were still playing house.
Yeah.
And, you know, things got serious. I'd say since then till this next few years of expectations in the marriage, things really evolved. And I can tell you one thing, I could never have a conversation of, hey, Stefano, like, do you think you could empty the dishwasher? That was like off the table. I hate to say it, but even my mom, she would say, when I walk in your house, it's like walking into 1960. That's what she would say back then, because my husband was he was an old school Italian guy, and he grew up in a household where his mother, she didn't work, a little bit part-time, and she cooked and cleaned, and she was an amazing mother. And just like you said before, those roles were so black and white. Right. There was no gray area for our parents. Yeah. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you almost wish you could go back to those days sometimes.
I do,
and just where it was like there was clear job descriptions.
Yes.
And I think if you look at really wealthy families, it's interesting because it's historically accurate that in very like successful families, there are clear roles and responsibilities. And it isn't a like, you know, mine are better or more important than yours.
Nope.
And I think one thing that I always like admired about the relationship I was in was that I felt like we were on the same team. Now, I think the problem is if both people actually don't feel that way. But I always felt like I'm the provider. I do that really, really well. And she wanted to be full-time mommy, trust her mommy instincts, and be there. And I always gave her credit for I wouldn't be able to do what I do if you weren't doing everything you were doing.
Amen.
And I never like once in 14 years ever like asked like, how much are you spending? You know, hey, I noticed you just ordered this. Hey, what's all these Amazon boxes? I was just trusting that like you deserve. If you want to go have a chef, if you want a trainer, if you want to put the kids in private school, if you want to go to Florida in the winters, like I was okay with that because I was being equipped and supported to go do what I do best.
Yes.
Now, I think where the challenges come in is if there isn't a clear conversation around that, and if maybe there's just an assumption, and if people are both bringing in traumas from the past where they're, you know, unable to have those conversations. You know, I could only speak on behalf of us, but we both came into our marriage with a pattern of sweeping problems under the rug. Yeah. So if there was
probably
an issue,
a problem of our generation.
Yeah, just like we'll deal with this later. Hey, we'll deal with this later. We learned from our parents. We'll deal with this later. We'll deal with this later. But eventually it's like sweeping dirt under a rug in the living room. Eventually, like you've got to clean it or else you can't move around the house anymore. So it eventually becomes a major problem. So I think every couple is different. Like I don't think I do believe like there isn't like a one way, but I do believe both partners have to be enrolled in the dynamic that they're going to set up. And whether one person has more responsibility in one department versus the other, I think the biggest thing is that both parties' feelings are like discussed. Like, hey, are you on board with this? Like, how do you feel about this? Are you sure? Like, are you aware that like I recognize that right now you're watching the kids, but like, hey, the kids are all going to be in school in a year from now. Like, what do you want to do? Like, what are your dreams? Like, do you want me to? I think those conversations like are more important than like the actual outcomes. Yes. Because then, you know, people just start to feel neglected and unimportant. And that unfortunately is what happened in my situation. So
a person has to feel heard.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of that respect comes from. And it's not necessarily what happens, the changes that come with that, but it's being heard and seen and feeling that way. I had a girlfriend, I learned a lot from just this one statement she said to me. She said, right now, my spouse, his name, needs for me to be at home and support him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's a very busy entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur. They made the choice to have that third child.
Yeah.
She was a teacher in the past, and she said it was very clear to me. That to me was so black and white of where she knew where she was going to be for the next few years. Uh-huh. And he said, listen, I'm going to do this. I'm going to provide. I know you're putting your career on hold to have this third child and be the stay-at-home mother that I want, but this is what our family needs, our family dynamic needs for the next decade.
Yeah.
And she owns that role. She owns it. She's happy because I feel like she was heard.
Right.
It wasn't like they got married, she went into this role and it wasn't discussed.
Right.
They discussed it. They put it on the table. And to me, that when I heard that statement from her is so-and-so needs for me to be this right now for him. Yeah. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. Like, that's awesome. And I think the big, warning for like either party listening is like, make sure like she doesn't start to harbor any bitterness and resentment. And then he finds out 5 years later when she actually, and I'm not saying this is the case, but what I also hear a lot of is a woman will say, like, I don't want to rock the boat.
We hear this a lot.
I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm going to fit into this mold. Mm-hmm. And, there is a form of safety and security, but she's not getting other things. And the husband gets notified when it's too late for her. And then the husband feels like blindsided. I thought we were on the same page. So I think it's an ongoing conversation. It's not like, hey, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this. Absolutely. I think it's like a constant check-in. And, from what I'm learning about, women, it's like very important to be seen and heard and valued, but like not on a monthly or yearly basis. Like it's a meeting, but like daily. And hey, do you need a break today? And I think what I've learned personally is that a man, not maliciously, but men can take advantage.
Yeah, not maliciously.
I don't think they wake up, I'm going to screw my wife over today, but they can see like, wow, I've got a great wife. And my wife is, supportive, and I can actually get away with working some extra hours and, going on some extra trips. And a man just assumes she's always going to be there and assumes that, hey, we got married. We are wearing rings. We said vows. We did it in a church. We did it in front of God. So like, she's always going to be there. But I think the big thing is to realize like, if there's a compromise on her side, and even if it's like the smallest thing, it will become the biggest thing.
Yes.
So I think these roles and responsibilities are great, but it's like a job, right? Like with your team, like you have to check
every year we do a performance review.
Right.
I think that my husband always says this. He says that marriages should be leases. He goes, because that year of when your lease is up, you're going to work your butt off.
Right.
Because you don't want to lose that car.
Yeah.
So
I heard a good
solution.
line. No, it is true. I mean, the assumption that like, we're just going to be together forever. I mean, it's, especially when you come from a traditional family, a faith-based family, you've seen your parents stay together. You just assume, hey, there's issues here. We're both aware of them, but we'll deal with them later. But then, later never comes. And then next thing you know, you're separated, you're divorced, and you're like, what the heck happened?
Yes.
What the heck happened? What happened was you were disconnected from each other's feelings. And you just got busy, right? And I think even with men who provide, the woman gets insulated maybe in money and experiences, and it's like comfortable. They have a nice house, then they kind of just, it's not great, but it's also not bad until it is.
Yes.
So it's just like with every job description, you have like, each person has a different personality. The way I talk to each person on my team is different. So I think every relationship is the same way, and it's a constant check-in. And I think both parties do need to be willing to, like, this is where I feel like I didn't do the greatest job, is I didn't bend. And I think, women probably do this much better because they have that innate, intuition to know like the kids have to be okay. Like you got mamas have the mama bear instincts. Like they know like the kids have to be okay.
Yeah.
Like a husband will be a little more like, the kid's okay. All right, good. Thumbs up. But the woman will
fine.
Like, she'll like make sure that the kids are okay to the point where she's going to sacrifice her her needs to make sure those kids are okay. Husbands are just like, we're not as wired in tune
No,
with that.
and it's just.
But that can create issues down the road. And I think, we were just talking a bit about another concept that I think is really crucial in relationships is that I read this from a book. It's called Boundaries in Marriage. It's probably one of the best books.
Wow.
I wish I'd read it before.
Yeah,
I got married.
I will read it.
Boundaries in Marriage and Love
Noted.
and Respect. Boundaries in Marriage, Love and Respect. And the book just
who's
simply
it by?
I forget.
Okay. It's okay. We'll look it up.
But Boundaries in Marriage just talks about how a lot of people get into relationships because they see somebody else having something that they're missing. So it's, hey, if you and I get together, we're going to complete each other.
Uh-huh.
And that's actually the false premise.
Yes.
The first goal is to complete yourself.
Yes.
Separate of the other person. So when you complete yourself, you have a level of separateness. You have your own life. Like you have your own activities, your own friends, your own pursuits. And that's actually very attractive. So if I have my own pursuits, you have your own pursuits. At the end of the day, when we get together, it's like, hey, how was your day? And you're telling me about your day. I'm telling you about my day. But I think sometimes when the kids are young, like the woman's pursuits aren't like, they're very different.
Yes.
It's just kind of keep the house in order, making sure the kids are clean. So I find like a woman can lose herself in that phase. But I also think that that's okay because it's a season. It's not the climate. Like your kids are growing up. This is a season that you have to own.
Yes.
And I think I just wish like couples would just like embrace, like we are in a season, we chose to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like the business might have to be second or third for a little
for a
while.
few years.
And I just feel like if both people work enough on themselves, when they come together, they're not relying on the other person as much to fill those voids.
Yeah.
And
agreed. Big time.
and yes, there are needs each person has in a relationship for sure. And those things have to be discussed. But, I can't make you happy.
No.
And you can't make me happy. So if my business is suffering and my happiness is based on how much money the business is making right now, I can't come and dump that all on you.
Yes.
Because it's not your responsibility to help me with my happiness, because I'm building my happiness around my identity of being a successful businessman. And that's not a good identity.
No.
Because businesses goes up and down. Now you suffer because I haven't learned how to manage who I am. I'm finding my worth in external circumstances. And now you feel burdened.
Yes.
And now you feel like, oh, my husband's stressed. What do I do? Like, you don't need to do anything. I need to go get help.
Yes.
I need to go get help. You can be there and like, hey, I'm listening, but like, you don't need to solve this it's not your job to solve it. And I think that's where things start to, like, bitterness and resentment start to build up. And then it's like every man for themselves after that.
Well, then that's the point where you become selfish and you're not willing to bend because you feel so much resentment.
Yes.
So much resentment.
And then you start to hold out on certain things. You start to hold out on, words of affirmation, physical touch, and all the things. And the guy's like, now, and that's like, goes into the next book, Self-Love and Respect.
There you go.
Where in, successful marriages, it's unconditional love and it's unconditional respect. But what happens is like, well, he didn't do this. The respect. She doesn't deserve love. And the book calls that the crazy cycle. So when we're in the crazy cycle where you're like, you don't deserve any respect for me. I'm like, well, you don't deserve any love for me.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here? The more mature person has to step in. So one person has to step in. And that's essentially how God loved us. Like we don't deserve his love and his mercy and his grace. He gave that freely because he loved us. So like we have a higher calling for how to act in a relationship. But, if both people aren't on the same page and aren't aware that like, hey, one person's trying, like, I mean, I get it why somebody's going to want to feel like giving up.
Absolutely.
So I think just to kind of go back, I think both people have to really be in tune with themselves and their hearts, or else they might be completely disconnected from all the feedback they're getting as well in the marriage. Like you might be telling me this, but it's not even processing.
Yes.
Because I would say
I deal with that a lot with members is they get to a point where they've completely neglected themselves, right? They put themselves on the back burner. Women, I've said this before, women wear that martyr role like a badge of honor. Let me take away from myself in order to give my children 220%, whether it's emotionally, physically, financially, let me give it all to them. I deal with a lot of women who are just constantly martyring their families. I don't want to take away time from them. I don't want to take away income or anything and give it to myself. Well, then she does neglect herself to the point where she doesn't even recognize herself. And then begins the whole, well, my husband isn't making me happy, but I'm so unhappy, and I think it's recognizing that you're unhappy for a reason.
Right.
This didn't just happen overnight. The marriage didn't become this overnight. This is years and years of you didn't make yourself happy at some point or another. And I try to reason with women, it's okay. Take a little bit of their time, a little bit, you got to do something because living like this is not an option.
Right.
And so a lot of women, unfortunately, they'll leave that final decision to the husband. They give themselves permission to go as far as booking a call with me.
Okay.
But then they leave that final decision.
Got it.
To their husband.
Right.
And I ask my husband several times, I ask him over and over, every time I get off a call, I'm like, Stefano, why would a man not want his wife to take better care of herself? And it's because it's so long gone that she's even wanted to take better care of herself because she's in this extreme situation. Not all the time, but a lot of the time.
Yeah. I think from a male's perspective, I know that a man could be threatened if he sees his wife taking an initiative to potentially outgrow him. And I think women, I could be wrong, but I think women are afraid to outgrow their husbands because then they'll be forced to have to leave them. I'm not forced to leave them, but then that's going to create a dynamic that what do I do? I've outgrown him. So they allow this, it's a low standard. You just settle for a low bar. And again, I think it's like these are the opportunities a couple has to actually get vulnerable with each other.
Yes.
And I think a lot of marriages, together. If you talk to anyone about what's wrong with your marriage, there's no emotional connection. There's no emotional intimacy. Well, where do those things come from? They come from vulnerability. So I wouldn't be threatened by this. I would sit down and put the cards on the table. Maybe if you need professional help because there's too many inner traumas going to rise and one person's going to get defensive and one person's going to attack, then have the conversation in a safe place, but say, hey, I really want to get my body back. And I understand you're not there, but I love you for who you are and not for who you could be and should be. And that's the standard God has. And I think God doesn't love you for who you could be down the road or should be. I love you for who you are. So, hey, listen, you're in a place right now where your fitness isn't a priority. I'm going to go get, a flat tummy, a nice booty, and don't worry.
Yeah, it's
I'm
all
yours.
good.
I'm yours. We're a team. This is something I want to do. I want to feel good for myself and for you. And I think I don't know if those conversations happen.
I don't think they do. And I think that
because they're scared. Yeah, there's
definitely
fear.
There's fear around being that vulnerable. And saying to the other person, hey, I want to better myself so I'm just a better person for us. And I'm going to lead the family in this direction and you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be not fun. I'm not going to, and just explaining yourself and your intention.
Right.
I think that would I think that you're onto something, Vince.
I think what you're saying is it's for the female, it's not her responsibility to, have him have to buy in. It's hey, this is where I'm at. This is the vision I have. And I want to take a step in this direction. How do you feel about this? And I think when everybody's understood, what are your thoughts? I'm not asking for permission, but at the same time, I'd like your support.
And some women are asking for permission.
Yeah. And I understand if there's investments and things have to be discussed, absolutely.
Totally. Exactly.
But if one party wants to better themselves, if my wife wants to get hotter and that means she's getting in bed with me, I'm go for it. Why would I be threatened by that? I'd be let's find you the best personal trainer in town, as long as they're not a
let's
male.
Let's not get scammed.
Let's find a great coach. Let's do this. How can I help? How can I step in? And I think when you get to that level of trust, man, that's when magic happens.
Final thought, I know we're running out of time, but you know, the couples that we've seen that have done it together where husbands were on board, whoa, does their relationship, their intimacy, their children's lives, it's an effect that you cannot pay for. Yeah. It is incredible what happens to some of these families that the parents take on the challenge of bettering themselves, and it's unbelievable. It's such a beautiful thing to see. So it's just knowing that is a possibility for your family to be more connected. You know, we hear stories all the time. I had a woman tell me, like, they're so much more romantic now. Right. They go on walks together. They're not sitting on the couch together. Right. They're going walks. So stuff like that. We are out of time. Thank you so much. I know we could go on and on, but you can find me at SuzanGalluzzo.com. You can find Vince
at VinceDelmonte.com
on
Instagram. Vince Delmonte on Instagram. Blue verified checkmark account. And Vince Delmonte on Instagram is the best spot.
Awesome. Okay. Looking forward to hearing this.
All right.
Thank you.